That should calm you down. I want you to peek inside my head a little bit. Fortunately, with liquid glass, this appears like this. But if you tap it, it comes back. And so I don't want it just to be hidden. I want this to go away. And so something I've learned to do is to breathe and just be here. And now I'm feeling good, so let's do you. I want to take a moment together and either, depending on your comfort level, either soften your gaze, or if you trust me, for a moment, close your eyes. And let's breathe in for 4, 4, 3, 2, 1, and out for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Continue to breathe. I want you to be here in this moment because for so many of us, we're living in the past, we're living in the future. It took so much for you to be here. I don't want you to be thinking about, what happened this morning, what happened yesterday. There's so many things you worry about in your past, or you've got a deadline and I really shouldn't be here. I should be working on this thing or that. Just breathe. Just be here. You're here. How many times are we someplace, but we're just not really there? And so go ahead and open your eyes. Maybe you're lying down during this opening keynote and really relaxing. I'm just going to tell you some stories. You just lie there and you find the lessons that apply to you. I think of what we value, what we do every day, and a lot of us think of the hardware, but most of the time what we're focused on is the starfish, the software, even when it looks like this with liquid glass. There's new hardware that gets announced this time of year, and so we get very excited, and we think about that. There's a yearly upgrade. My birthday was last week, and so for me this time of year, there's a personal hardware upgrade too. And so every year I think about, for this next year, who I want to be, what I want to be, how I want to tweak things. And so I just looked at the Daniel 66, and I considered it, but the Daniel 66 Pro was a little nicer. It's a little more expensive, but a little nicer. I thought for a moment about the Pro Max, but I can't do that. I planned for the Air for this year, but it didn't ship. So that's hardware. I also think about software. And the nice thing about software is it's soft. We think often we can change. And I think back to my time many years ago when I worked as a radio DJ. You can ask older people what radio was. And my first job was in an album-oriented rock station, and it was magical. It was the music I loved. And the problem was when I went looking for my next job, because I changed cities, no one could see me doing any format other than the one that I had tapes of me doing. Once you're doing something, people can't often see you change. You're a designer, they can't see you as a developer. You're an iOS person, they can't see you as a back-end. But I eventually changed to urban contemporary, and then I worked in news, and then I worked in what's called adult contemporary or soft rock, and at every step, people could only see me doing what I was doing then, even though I had a history of doing different things. I went on to smooth jazz and other formats, didn't matter. Others put you in a box, and sometimes you put you in a box. The only way to get out is to do something, a new format. And so maybe you do something that is changing your software, maybe you do something that is changing your hardware, but you have to do something. So for example, with hardware, there's this yoga thing. So I've been doing yoga for about a year, and we go to class, and we all stand, and the teacher says, bend to the side. And everyone bends to the side, and I try. And people told me, give it 6 months. And so it's now been 11 months, and I can bend this far. And I got to tell you, it's so frustrating, because everyone else is bending over and looking great. And I'm getting that far. And I ask, why did I even begin? Why do I keep doing this? So many whys. And my teacher says, breathe. Be here. Do what you can do. Just do something. That's hardware. There's also software. So there's software and there's hardware, and in either case, what we try to do is something. And so I try to walk more. I bike. I do this yoga. I used to do Tai Chi, and when I did Tai Chi, I did it for 20 years. We had this woman named Geraldine, and this is what she did. But she'd had a stroke. And no one thought about her limitations. We all were so impressed that she was there doing something. And over time, she began to do more and more. This woman with a stroke. And I think of that, and I think about me doing yoga and what I think about myself, and Geraldine doing Tai Chi and what we thought of her. And I think if only we could be as kind, as patient as we are with others, we could be that kind with ourselves. And we're not. We keep commitments to other people, but if we have to go to the gym or we want to do something fun, we can put that aside. So we learn this golden rule of doing unto others as you would have them do unto you. And what I'm asking you to do is something harder. Breathe and do unto yourself as you do unto others. You're usually pretty nice to other people. You deserve that. So I've been doing yoga for a while, and actually, I don't do real yoga. I do something called gentle yoga. And we start lying down, and the teachers have us relax and connect to our body. And every day that we show up, our bodies are different. Something hurts somewhere else, something's tight somewhere else. Our left sides and our right sides aren't the same. And so taking a moment to figure out where we are that day and breathe and connecting to our breath and being there, and then slowly we start to exercise and we open ourselves up and we stretch and we reach. And eventually, after class, we make our way back to the ground and we lie down and we return to our breath. And then the teacher says, okay, we're done, let's wrap this up. Now this was the point I got to say, when my wife used to do yoga, someone had to wake her up because she'd be snoring at this point. But most people in my class don't snore, and so we sit back up and we reflect and we appreciate where we were. And the teachers all say something interesting. They say, honor yourselves for showing up. Same with you guys. You're here today. That took something. So sure, appreciate the speakers on stage, but appreciate what it took for you to get here and what each of you took to get here and what we can build now that we're all together. So for this keynote, I'll be telling you stories, and just find the lessons that apply to you. And breathe. And be here. And do something. Oh, you can. No, you can. There's so many problems. One of the problems is you want to do everything. And you can't do everything. But you can do something. One thing. And you'll find that. Another problem is you're stuck with the things that happened already. And you're stuck with the things that you're thinking about. And the problems are mostly in your head. That's what's keeping you from being here and doing something. And in your head, you're hearing voices that tell you you can't, you shouldn't, you suck. Try to quiet those voices. Try to get them to go away. So I want to tell you a story about Josh. Many of you remember Josh, and some of you know Josh's story. He told it here last year. And I'd already heard it because there was a conference where I was an MC and Josh was the speaker, and he wanted me to know that he has a fear of talking. And his fear of talking is because he has a stutter. And you think, this is a story about Josh. How do I make this about me? You don't make this about you. Remember, you look for the lessons that apply to you. So Josh is afraid of public speaking because he has a stutter, and he speaks anyway. Something that you're not doing, something. Maybe it's speaking, maybe it's something completely different. Just think of something you're not doing and ask, what's preventing you? It could be hardware. I'm not going to play basketball professionally, not with this hardware. Something you're not doing. Maybe that something you're not doing is speaking at SwiftLeeds, and maybe what's preventing you is, Adam's such a jerk, he didn't accept me. That sounded awfully personal. Maybe it's not so specific. Maybe it's just speaking publicly. And so identify the cause. And maybe if you can, address that cause. What's preventing you? Maybe you've got nothing to talk about. Maybe you lack the confidence. Maybe you never applied. Maybe you're afraid. Now, there's a difference between these kind of issues and these kind of issues. If you lack confidence or fear, that's not necessarily someone else's fault, and there's not necessarily something you can do about it. But I want to point out to you, Josh has a real fear. It's not imagined. And he speaks publicly anyway. I've been speaking publicly for more than 40 years, and I still get nervous. It's why I'm not walking around the stage with a clicker, because you'd see my hand shake. So I'm afraid to speak, and yet I speak anyway. So what's preventing you? Lack of confidence, lack of fear. If you go to a traditional therapist, they'll spend a lot of time exploring what's the root of these obstacles. Why do you lack confidence? Why do you lack fear? But there's another philosophy, and I encountered it in a book called Playing Ball on Running Water, and it said, go ahead, lack the confidence. Be afraid, do it anyway. Stand on stage and be afraid, but stand on stage. So if there's something you're not doing and you ask what's preventing you, often, not always, it's you. So, I was talking to Josh about this, and he told me he stuttered, and I said, actually, I've seen you speak, and I only know you stutter because you told me. And he said, it turns out most people don't notice. That thing in your head, that thing that's preventing you from doing things, it turns out most people don't notice. It's just something you carry around. Often, but not always, it's you. So here's another view of me. And another fear of mine is that I'm aging out of this community. And I worry that you'll think I'm too old. And it turns out, once again, the problem is me. If I feel old, I worry that you'll see me as old. And so maybe I make the problem go away and say the problem was me. Now, it came from a real place, because for a long time it hurt me to stand or to walk because I have sciatica. And sciatica starts there at the sciatic nerve, but for some reason, and the reason it took so long for a doctor to figure it out, was it manifested for me in my feet. My feet hurt, or my ankles, and it would move around. And so I said, well, I'll apply my lessons from fear, and I'll stand or I'll walk anyway. And that'll get me up in front of you, but not all obstacles are the same. That's a real physical problem. Not that fear isn't a real problem, but it feels different. The doctor said, well, you can stretch before it hurts. Well, before it hurts, I don't know to stretch because it doesn't hurt yet. So then I started doing yoga, and the pain went away. Not right away. It took months to see the results. But I no longer felt old. I felt completely different because I was stretching, because I was in this class. There's a couple in my yoga class. She's 87. He's 88. They are the cutest thing. He carries their mats in for them, lays them both out for them. How do I feel old when I see these two just doing this? Josh still has a stutter. I'm still old, but that's not what people feel. And that's not what people see. I'm also afraid of heights. I know, I didn't think I'd be making this many confessions. So I was recently in Seville, and Seville Cathedral has a rooftop tour. So I signed up for it. That's me. It's really high up. Anyway, I'm old. And you can hear it in my stories. And so I want to tell you a story about Kim. Kim and I were friends for a long time. And I just happen to remember that January 25th, 1992 was our first date. And I also remember she didn't want to date me. I didn't know till later that the reason was she knew if we dated, we'd get married, and she didn't want to marry me. We went out a lot, but we weren't dating. And then, after months, she went on a cruise. And I thought, I know, I'm going to make a gesture so she knows that this is important to me. I'm going to send her flowers on the cruise and maybe some wine. And a sarcastic note. The cruise ship didn't allow that. All they'd allow me to do was send compliments of. That didn't work. So I thought some more. And I came up with another idea. After her cruise, she had to fly back from Los Angeles to Cleveland, and so I found out what flight she was on. And I called my travel agent. It's a very old story. And I bought some flowers, and I went down to the airport the day before. And in those days, there was no security. And I looked for a flight going to Los Angeles. And I found it, and I went down to the gate, and I told my story to the gate agent, and they called a stewardess off the flight, and I told the story to the stewardess, and the stewardess says, oh, I know who's going to be working that flight coming back. Give me the flowers, I'll give it to them, and they'll give it to her on board. And the next day, Kim is flying back to Cleveland, and the stewardess came down the aisle and embarrassed the heck out of her. So, mission accomplished. She gets back to Cleveland and doesn't call me. Not the next day, the day after that. Sometimes you do something and it's something big, and it should have a great effect, and nothing happens. So we went back to the way we were, going out most nights, not dating. And eventually I thought, this is stupid. This is the woman I want to be with, but if we're not going to do anything about dating and moving this along, then I'm going to ask out someone else. So I told her, I'm going to take someone else out to this thing. This woman has evening plans, but I'm going to this afternoon thing. She showed up on my front porch that night, and we started dating. And a year later, we were married. And she knew that would be the problem. If we dated, we'd get married. This is a delicate point to make, because I don't want you to take the wrong lesson from this. You have to know when to walk away. And Kim, for years, told our kids that was the smartest thing he ever could have done, because otherwise things would have just stayed the same. She needed to think a moment and say, wait a minute. She had to say this is stupid. And so I'm not saying you get what you want by walking away. I'm not saying that. You should never walk away unless you're really walking away. But sometimes it works out. The reason it worked out is because I'd done the work. And she'd done the work. We'd gone out for almost 6 months. Even though she never got back to me about the flowers on the airplane, that had made a big impression on her. And then she decided, this is stupid not to be married. So you have to do the work before you do the, okay, I've done enough. Do something. Now you're tired. We need a little intermission. So just breathe. Be here. And now let's continue. More stories. Your job is still to find the lessons that apply to you. Here's a story about my mom. Didn't see that coming, did you? When I graduated from college, my mother told me, everyone is going to tell you what they would have done at your age. But they all were your age. And they didn't do the thing that they would do. You people have that too. People come up to you all the time and go, if I was your age, I would do, I don't know, AI fruit stand or something. Things change. Sometimes it's just not the right time. You know, you can't go to the airport with flowers now. Kim used to go to the airport all the time. When friends were coming in, she would go to the airport all the time. In those days, again, no security. She would go sit and have a glass of wine and wait for the friend to land and then meet them and drive them home. In September of 97, we brought my eldest daughter, Maggie, home from China, and Kim's entire family came to the airport with balloons and everything. And they greeted us at the gate. Can't do that anymore. Things change. So here's a story about technology. In 1999, Kim was pregnant with our second child. Second child, first pregnancy, pay attention. Maggie was adopted. And I had a job interview in Buffalo. Buffalo, 2.5, 3 hours from Cleveland. The baby would be born March 3rd. I took my father-in-law's mobile phone. Mobile phones were not that mobile. They sat in huge boxes. They had to be powered. We called them mobile, but they weren't mobile like the phone in your pocket. They were more mobile than the phones we had. The phones we had were like this. They were anchored somewhere. You can imagine this by, what if you took all the apps off your phone, you turned off the Wi-Fi, and you duct taped it to a wall? That's what we had. Phones in those days were connected to a place. You weren't sure who was there. So if you called, you'd go, who is this? Because you knew where you were calling. You didn't know who you were calling. The iPhone is tied to a person. You're not sure where it is. So when you call someone now, you say, hey, where are you? You know who you're talking to. You don't know where they are. The worlds are different. You're making a phone call, but the context is different. Different questions, different answers. So like the phone, stories have context. When someone tells you what they would do if they were your age, they were your age in a different time, in a different place, in a different context. They should ask, what are you thinking of doing? Comedian Paula Poundstone tells one of my favorite jokes. She says, you know how adults are always asking kids what they want to be when they grow up? It's because they're looking for ideas. Michael Flareup says, you should create things for those kids that are asking you things. You should create things for the kid inside of you, because really an adult is just a kid who forgot how to have fun. So I'm old, but I'm still a kid. I'm playing all the time. I'm always looking for ideas. But the other thing you get to do as you get older, even your age, is you carry a ton of ideas with you. And so you've got this advantage where you've got experience, and hopefully you keep your eyes open for what's ahead. Here's just a quick story about ideas. I told you I was a radio DJ, and one of the stations I worked in was a top 40 station. And so the red songs come up more often, and so in a top 40 station, the top songs play every hour and a half, and the next category every 2.5, and 3.5, like they mix. So they're different songs all the time, but your favorite ones come up more often. So that's how that clock works, and then there's commercial breaks and all that. And this gave me an idea for 2 apps. One was to rotate playlists like a top 40 station, and the other was a calendar to-do scheduler because everyone wants to write a to-do list. And then Music Kit for Swift shipped. And I said, oh, I can write this first app. And so Top Tracks was a combination of this thing I'd been carrying with me for 10 years and this thing that was now suddenly available. Sometimes you have a great idea, but the time isn't right. Things aren't there for you. Music Kit made it right for Top Tracks. Sometimes you get a great idea, and it depends. All the time people say, hey, should I stay on Apple platforms? It depends. I don't know what the answer is for you, but I'm very old. I've got just this much left. For me, staying on Apple platforms makes sense. I've invested a lot in it. I love this world. I love the people that work in this world. Staying here is right for me. I don't know if I was 25 if I'd make that same decision. What about AI? Should I use it? How should I use it? For me, different answer than for many of you. So Music Kit made it the right time for Top Tracks, but we've all got different decisions. Now, sometimes the time is really right, and you still don't do something. So what's preventing you? Well, we're back to our friends. Sometimes you're offered something, if I was your age, and sometimes you should say yes. Sometimes you should say no. No is hard. Sometimes someone says something to you, and it's a really nice offer, and you think it'd be kind of cool, but you know you should say no, and you don't know how to. And in order to say no, sometimes the trick is you need a bigger yes. So when I was younger, the thing that I loved more than anything else in the world was teaching. I taught high school, I taught college, I taught graduate classes. I loved teaching. Teaching defined who I was. My parents were teachers. My mom taught little kids. My dad taught college students. It was just something I'd grown up with that I just always loved, more than anything else in the world. Or so I thought. There's Kim, there was Maggie, there was Elena, and at 45, I changed what I did. I'd been teaching mathematics. I'd gotten a degree in math, I'd gotten an advanced degree in math, I'd studied education, and at 45, I changed what I did because of a bigger yes. It was really tough times in math education, and to get a job at the university level, I would have had to move, and I would have had to move my family. And Kim, of course, said, okay, but my parents lived 30 miles away, Kim's parents lived 5 miles away, and the kids saw their grandparents all the time. And so I changed what I did to keep my kids near their grandparents. I said no to teaching, to this thing that I loved, because of a bigger yes. Never regretted it, never questioned it, because this was the thing that I loved more than anything else. So you need to find your bigger yeses. It really makes it easier to make decisions. Instead of waiting until you need a job, you're confronted with something, and you make decisions because you have to make a decision. At my age, I don't apply for jobs at Apple. I love Apple. I've lived in their world for many years, but I have a bigger yes. My bigger yes is I love writing, and I love doing this thing with you guys. And you can't do those things if you work for Apple. So I know my bigger yes. And it makes it easier for me to say no. Sometimes you have a great idea. I know I'll do this, but you don't know where to start. There's this famous story that Dr. Wave tells. It's actually a Brad Bird story from Pixar, and it's about the director Gower Champion. And Champion walks into this rehearsal for a show, and everyone is standing around. And he looks at the choreographer and he says, "What's going on? Everyone's just standing around." And the choreographer says, "I just don't know what to do next. And Gower says, well, do something so we can change it. Isn't that freeing? Do something. As a writer, when I'm stuck with a blank page, I write anything and then I change it. With this talk, I can't tell you how many slides I threw away, but I had to write the talk to do that. I was throwing slides away this morning and adding new slides. Do something. Not always, but often we can change it. So, I have a story about doing something, and it is our last story, and you might know it. We're along the ocean, and bunches of starfish have washed up on the sand, and they're dying. And someone approaches and bends over and grabs a starfish and throws it into the water. And this other person washing says, "What are you doing?" And the first person walks on a little bit, picks up another starfish, and our observer says, there are thousands of starfish. What possible difference are you making? And our first person takes the starfish and throws it into the water and says, I made a difference to that one. You can't do everything, but you can do something. Now, I have questions about that story. What if you save the wrong one? Some starfish are jerks. And what if you save that one? You try. You do something. Now, a lot of you have a different question is, why don't I just play the Starfish app? I'll be on Game Center, people see how good I'm doing. That's not doing something. So our practice is nearly at the end. I hope we've reached, we've stretched, we've opened ourselves, and now we return to our breath. And we honor ourselves for being here, and we reflect on what we've learned. We think of that starfish. And it was at this point that something occurred to me. And that is, in this starfish story, there's a second, that one. Of course, there's the starfish that was saved. But the second, that one, can be, should be, will be the other person. Because perhaps after that encounter, they'll have an idea and they'll go save a starfish of their own. And that makes them that one. That's our second, that one. It doesn't have to be a fish. It's someone who does something. And that's why I tell stories. Because I know that you can be that one. And I know that actually you are that one. And you will make a difference. And because this is an Apple conference, I say, I can't wait to see what you do with this. Do something. Thank you.